Human Rights Act strategist, a playwright, and a computational linguist. These are just some of the professions held by the MacArthur Foundation's newest class of fellows, often called geniuses. Among the 24 recipients are 2 Chicagoans, a community leader and a photographer. We're lucky to have them both with us right now in studio. Joining us are Rami Nashashibi, Executive Director of Iman, the Inner City Muslim Action Network, and Dawood Bey, photographer and professor at Columbia College, Chicago. Congratulations, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So we've just found out about it, obviously, but both of you have known for a little while that you've been chosen as MacArthur Fellows. Rami, how did you receive that news?
Yeah, I had my surreal moment actually in a way that's not so typical. In fact, I was called in under the pretense of a meeting that they wanted to have with me about some of the work that was going on in the community. And again, to my shock, I walked in and there was a room full of almost 7 folks, 7 women in this case, including the CEO and the president of MacArthur, and I immediately thought something was drastically wrong. And so I sat down to brace myself for the news, and when I was told, it was just a very surreal, out-of-body experience that I had in front of all of these people.
Dawood, was it tough to keep it a secret?
Very tough. I would say I felt for a month like my head was going to explode. They do allow you to tell one person, and so I told my son. And I think they allow you to tell one person, because if you don't tell anyone, I think that everything would just be kind of woozy for you for 4 weeks.
And that wouldn't look good when it's actually time to tell the world. You've been a photographer for more than 40 years, doing mostly portrait photography. Tell us about your work and what you try to convey through your photography.
Well, my work is fundamentally about making photographs of ordinary people, young people, African Americans, and making portraits of them that give them a heightened presence within the field that I work in the space where my work is exhibited, which is largely museums and galleries. And to take ordinary people and place these rich, psychologically resonant photographs of them in the places where other art objects are shown that are presumed to have some significance and importance.
Rami, your organization, Iman, you're based in Marquette Park, and last summer you all kind of led the establishment of the MLK Memorial there in Marquette Park. Why was that important to you all, and how does it influence, why is it a part of your work?
You know, at the core of our mission statement is this idea of health, wellness, and healing in the inner city, and we do that through running a holistic health clinic that provides everything from primary care to behavioral health, to working very heavily with returning citizens formerly incarcerated around job training and reentry programming, and working with a whole range of campaigns such as food justice and corner store campaigns that are about access to fresh food. But we also have a very strong artistic department, and the idea of doing a festival, which we've always done every other year in Marquette Park, called Taking It to the Streets. And for years we had talked about this narrative of King being stoned in Marquette Park on August 5th in 1966, and in many ways that was a symbol of division in the city and a symbol of the types of things that King came to the city 50 years ago to challenge, including redlining, restricted covenants, and even police brutality. And we felt it was critical to pull the city together to commemorate the 50th legacy year of that extraordinary legacy, and with the energy and activism of students from high schools, synagogues, churches, community groups across the city, we were able to pull off an extraordinary feat of recreating the march, and with the Chicago Public Art Group actually creating the first memorial to the Chicago Freedom Movement and King in Marquette Park.
And when you mention King being stoned, of course you mean the incident where he was hit with a rock by protesters when he came to Chicago.
Absolutely, yeah.
Dawood, you've lived with hearing loss. How has that impacted your work, your photography?
Well, I think it has impacted my work any number of ways. Most significantly in terms of the kinds of ideas that I try to engage in my work. Because my work is really about making photographs as a way of getting people more engaged in the world, more engaged with the human community. I try to use my work to create a conversation with the human community in such a way that they have a conversation with themselves. So the work is really about making visible and making more prominent those people and those circumstances that are in fact the world that we live in, and trying to find a way through my work to elevate that.
And Rami, Iman runs you mentioned it a minute ago, the Muslim-run corner store campaign. Now, typically corner stores, they kind of come with a negative connotation, but obviously you've used them to make them useful for the community. How does that work?
Well, for us, you know, like so much of our work, we really deal with the issue of healing more holistically. In the case of these corner stores, they have been sites of trauma that have accompanied the larger legacy of disinvestment and, you know, abandonment in inner city urban communities. And in many ways, these entities have been sites for lots of violence and negativity. And so Iman has, over the last 7 years, identified many of these store owners, many of whom are immigrants coming from the Middle East that are working in low-income Black communities. And since we're a multiracial, multi-ethnic kind of organization, has believed in the idea of the power of bringing communities of color together, communities that typically pitted against one another, to try to demonstrate that together we can produce an alternative, even around things like food justice, that lift up what can happen when our communities are more aligned with the collective vision of being a force for good.
Dawood, you've been taking photos since the 70s. How has the medium changed in that time since
Well,
then?
I think the medium has changed considerably. Photography has always, in some ways, been connected to its evolving technology, from the daguerreotype to the tintype to film, and obviously now to digital. So I think while the technology changes, the thing that potentially makes photography and making photographs matter in the world are still pretty much the same, because the technology is not the subject. The subject is the world. And I happen to still be photographing using film, because that's my history and those are my habits.
And while we're on that, you know, in this day and age of Instagram and smartphones, you're also a professor at Columbia College. What do you say to young people who want to pursue photography?
Well, I think for me, the most important thing about teaching is that teaching is a way to empower young people to find their own voice, to realize that the medium can be a vehicle of expression for things that they might not be able to talk about otherwise. So however they choose to engage the medium technologically, or whether through social media, I always try to get them to always be critical thinkers in their engagement with the medium, and to also realize that it's not just about the work, that it's about a certain set of values. My teaching is as much about photography as it is teaching a set of values, which is probably the not too often unspoken subtext of teaching.
And Rami, your group, Iman, you also run the Green Reentry program. You work with young people, helping them find jobs and helping those who are reentering, coming back from prison. Tell us how that works.
Well, you know, we fundamentally believe that the populations that have been directly affected the most, particularly in urban communities, when you're talking about the formerly incarcerated returning citizens and young people, often many of them have never really been given a first chance. And so we kind of think about the opportunity to provide training, job training around rehabilitation for vacant, vandalized homes in troubled blocks in Inglewood and in Chicago Lawn. And together, we have over 35 right now in the current cohort, both a youth demographic and an adult population. They're working in areas like carpentry, HVAC, and electric. And not only are they learning a lot of technical skills, but a lot of life skills. And they're becoming this transformative force for good in the community that's really a phenomenal source of inspiration for many of us.
And we're almost out of time, but both of you have come into a bit of money lately. The grant comes with $625,000 stipend. What's next for you? How do you plan on using that?
You know, I'm hoping to continue to leverage the extraordinary work that the organization has done. I'm going to use a little bit for kind of rejuvenation. I'm in our spiritual tradition, there's the pilgrimage that I've never been able to make called the Hajj. So I think the first thing I decided is I'm going to finally make that and hopefully get some, rejuvenate that creative juice and spiritual foundational aspects of this work, which is so important for me.
And quickly, Dawood, what about you? Where's that money going?
I think I'm going to use it to continue doing the work that I'm doing, to deepen the work that I've been doing, and to perhaps be even more ambitious in the ways in which I engage the work, moving also into video, which I've done a bit of, and videos and crews tend to have a different kind of set of expenses than the lone photographer with the camera. So I've really been kind of dragging my feet in terms of video, and I think that this fellowship will allow me to move more ambitiously into that area in my own practice.
Well, we look forward to seeing what's next for both of you. Congratulations again to Rami Nashashibi and Dawood Bey. Thank you both for joining us.